Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. We're taking a look today at some pretty bizarre events that happened up in New Jersey
Yeah, okay.
with these drone sightings, and we've gotten some analysis from you guys, which is really fascinating. That connects it back to the 1938
Oh, wow.
War of the Worlds broadcast,
Yeah.
and it goes a lot deeper than you might think.
Okay.
We're talking about like recurring numbers, hidden symbolism, all this stuff.
This stuff.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I find it really fascinating how this analysis links these seemingly unrelated events across time.
Yeah.
On the surface, drones in 2024 and a radio broadcast in 1938
Right.
seem completely disconnected.
Totally.
But when you look closer, there might be a
Yeah.
deeper layer of meaning,
Uh.
one that's been carefully coded using numbers and symbols.
Okay, before we get into all that, can you just give us like a quick recap of the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast?
Yeah.
Like I know it was a big deal and it caused like mass panic, but like it's been a while since history class.
It has been a while.
Yeah.
So just to kind of set the stage here.
Yeah.
In 1938, Orson Welles, he was a young actor at the time on the Mercury Broadcasting Network,
Okay.
narrated a radio adaptation of H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds. The broadcast was presented like a real news bulletin, describing a Martian invasion as it was happening.
Uh-huh.
The problem was many listeners tuned in late
Oh no.
and missed the disclaimer at the beginning, where they said it was fictional.
Oh.
So people genuinely believed Martians were attacking, which understandably caused mass panic.
Yeah, I mean, that would freak me out too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's kind of wild how like a story, even a fictional one, can have such a powerful impact.
It is.
You'd think people would be a little more skeptical back then.
Right. Well, you got to remember, this was a time
Mm-hmm.
when radio was a primary source of news and entertainment.
Oh yeah, that's true.
People trusted what they heard on the radio.
Oh.
And the way Wells presented this story, with realistic sound effects
Mm-hmm.
and that dramatic narration,
Mm-hmm.
made it so convincing.
Yeah, I mean, people didn't have like the internet to fact check.
Exactly.
I mean,
That's
just-
right.
Yeah, all right. So I did notice that the analysis we're looking at points out that it was on the Mercury Broadcasting Network.
Yes.
And that Mercury, the Roman god, is known for like trickery and deception.
Oh, that's interesting.
So is that just a coincidence?
That's a great question. It's certainly an interesting parallel, and this source actually suggests it's more than just a coincidence. It argues that these seemingly random connections are clues,
Okay.
part of a larger hidden pattern.
I'm not going to lie. This is starting to sound like a conspiracy theory.
I'm telling you.
Keep going. I'm hooked.
I will.
Ow.
So let's dive in a little bit deeper. This source heavily relies on numerology,
Okay.
specifically a practice called gematria.
Gematria. Okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not exactly sure what it means.
It's basically a system where you assign numerical values to letters and words,
Oh, okay.
kind of like a code. It's been used throughout history by different cultures and traditions, often to uncover hidden meanings and connections within texts.
So like a secret language based on numbers.
Exactly. And this source claims that there are some pretty incredible gematria connections
Mm-hmm.
linked to the War of the Worlds
Mm-hmm.
and these recent drone sightings.
Okay, like what?
Well, for instance, the source points out that both the War of the Worlds and H.G. Wells,
Okay.
the author of the original novel,
Mm-hmm.
have a gematria value of 86.
Wait, seriously?
Yes.
That's kind of spooky.
It is a little spooky.
What are the chances?
Right. That's exactly what this source is getting at.
Okay.
It argues that these numerical connections are too consistent to be random, suggesting a deliberate coding of symbolic meaning. And it gets even more interesting when you consider the timing of the drone sightings.
What do you mean?
Well, they occurred 86 years
No way.
after the War of the Worlds broadcast.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, so we got the War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells, both 86. Drone sightings, 86 years later. What does the number 86 actually mean, like, in this context?
Well, that's where the interpretation gets a little tricky.
Okay.
This source connects the number 86 to the all-seeing eye,
Okay.
a symbol that's often associated with secret societies
Mm-hmm.
and ideas of surveillance and control.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm following you.
Yeah.
So because both the book and the author's name have a gematria value of 86, and the drone sightings happened 86 years after the broadcast,
Yeah.
this source is saying that there's a link to secret societies.
Yes, and that the all-seeing eye might represent this hidden power structure operating behind the scenes.
That's a lot. It is a lot.
I'm already, blown away.
It is fascinating stuff.
So can you break down the all-seeing eye a little bit?
Yeah.
Am I really up on all my conspiracy theory symbols? Sure.
Sure. So the all-seeing eye, it's a symbol that's been around for centuries,
Yeah.
appearing in various cultures and contexts.
One of its earliest and most well-known uses is in ancient Egypt, where it was associated with the Eye of Horus, a symbol of protection and royal power.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, and later it was adopted by Christianity, representing the all-knowing and ever-present God.
Right.
Then in the 18th century, the all-seeing eye became a key symbol in Freemasonry, representing the divine architect and the watchful gaze of a higher power.
Okay, so it has a pretty long and complex history.
It does.
But how did it get, like, the negative connotation of, like, control and surveillance?
Yeah, so because of its association with power and secret knowledge, the all-seeing eyes has been adopted by various groups throughout history,
Okay.
including some with less than benevolent intentions in more recent times. It's become a popular symbol in conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
representing a hidden elite or a shadowy government controlling the world from behind the scenes.
Right. Okay, so this source is suggesting that the all-seeing eye and the number 86 are clues pointing to a similar power structure at work today, possibly connected to those drone sightings in New Jersey.
That's right.
Okay.
And there's another number.
Oh, no, not another number.
There is another number.
This is like a numerical treasure hunt.
It is kind of a treasure hunt.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the other number?
It's the number 41.
41. All right, what's 41 all about?
This source connects the number 41 to the concept of alien.
Alien, okay.
And, interestingly enough, the United States itself.
Wait, what?
Yes.
How can a number represent like a whole country?
So, remember we're talking about gematria here.
Right.
This source claims that alien, Mercury, Halloween, and even USA all have a gematria value of 41.
You're kidding?
Nope.
Alien, like extraterrestrials.
Like extraterrestrials.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And this isn't the only connection to the number 41. The source also points out that the Jesuit order, a Catholic religious group often associated with conspiracy theories,
Right.
was suppressed for exactly 41 years,
Okay.
from 1773 to 1814. This period coincidentally overlaps with the founding and early years of the United States.
So you're telling me that the number 41 links the USA, aliens, Halloween, and the Jesuits.
That's what this source is suggesting.
I feel like I'm in Alice in Wonderland right now.
It's a lot to take in.
I'm going down the rabbit hole. Okay, so what are we supposed to make of all these connections?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source doesn't offer definitive answers, but it encourages us to think critically about these connections and to consider the possibility that they're not just random coincidences.
Okay, so let's back up for a second and talk about the drone sightings in New Jersey.
Sure.
Like, why is New Jersey such a focus for this whole analysis?
Well, because, remember, the fictional Martian landing in the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast also happened in New Jersey.
That's right.
Specifically in a town called Grover's Mill.
I vaguely remember that. So wait, are you saying that these recent drone sightings were also near Grover's Mill?
Well, not exactly near, but the source highlights the unusual timing of the drone sightings happening shortly after the 86th anniversary of the War of the Worlds broadcast. The same state as the fictional Martian landing.
Yeah.
Seems too coincidental to ignore.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So basically these drone sightings were like an echo of the War of the Worlds broadcast, playing on our collective fear of the unknown.
Exactly. And to drive home that connection to Grover's Mill, the source provides a whole list of gematria values associated with that specific location.
All right, hit me with it.
Okay, so we've got 177, 274, 266, 103, and 113.
All right, what do all those numbers represent?
Okay, so according to the source, 177 is linked to the Jesuit order, while 274 and 266 are connected to their motto, Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam, which translates to, for the greater glory of God.
Okay, so more Jesuit connections. What about the other number?
So 103, the source claims that further links back to the Jesuits. H.G.Wells and Mercury, strengthening that web of connections. And finally, 113 is associated with the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, adding another layer of potential symbolism to the location.
Okay, my brain is officially fried.
I know, it's a lot.
This is a lot.
It's a lot to digest.
But it sounds like this source is convinced that there's something bigger going on with all these things. War of the Worlds, the Jesuits, Freemasons, maybe even aliens.
Yeah.
All connected to these drone sightings.
He is a very compelling theory. And there's more.
Oh, no, there's more.
There is.
Okay.
The source also brings up Elon Musk and his Mars ambitions.
Elon Musk. Hold on, how does he fit into all of this?
We'll have to save that for after the break.
All right, sounds good.
We'll come back and we'll dig into Elon Musk and his connection to all of this.
Okay, stay tuned. Okay, so we're back, and we left off talking about Elon Musk.
That's right.
I mean, he's obviously obsessed with Mars, and he's definitely got close ties to the government with SpaceX.
Right.
But, like, what's the connection to these drone sightings?
It's not a direct connection, but the source seems to be drawing a parallel between the secrecy surrounding government-funded projects,
Okay.
like you mentioned, advanced drone technology, and these big ambitions for space exploration.
Okay. I
So
saw.
Musk is always championing.
So is this source saying that these drones are, like, part of Musk's Mars plans? Or is it more about, like, the idea of government secrecy and hidden agendas?
I think it's more about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
you know? The potential for powerful individuals and institutions to be operating behind the scenes, shaping our reality in ways that we might not fully understand. The source even mentions a character named Elon
Wait, what?
from a Nazi-authored book about a Mars mission.
Oh, a Nazi-authored book about Mars?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds kind of out there. Like, how is that relevant?
Well, this connection, while seemingly random,
Mm.
is used by the source to question the true origins and motivations behind the push for space exploration. Is it really about scientific advancement? Is it about the betterment of humanity? Or is there maybe something a little bit darker at play?
Okay, this is starting to get kind of creepy now. You're making me question everything.
Well, that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
The source is encouraging us to think critically about the information that we're given, to question these narratives that are presented to us, and to consider some alternative perspectives.
And speaking of questioning narratives, this source actually quotes a former CIA agent who speculated that these drone sightings could be a classified exercise.
Wow, that's interesting.
I mean, it's one thing to have some, like, conspiracy theorist talking about aliens and secret societies, but when, like, a former CIA agent is, like, hinting at covert government operations, it definitely makes you wonder what's really going on.
It does. And the source connects this quote back to the numerology we discussed earlier,
Okay.
pointing out that the gematria values for classified exercise are 85 and 113.
Don't tell me. Those numbers align with...
You guessed it. The values for Grover's Mill, New Jersey, and the War of the Worlds.
No way. Okay, that's officially too many coincidences for me to ignore. I mean, this source is, like, really building a strong case for some kind of connection between all these events, but, like, what's the point? What are they trying to tell us?
This source is arguing that these events and the way they're being reported are meant to create a sense of hysteria and fear,
Okay.
ultimately distracting us from something bigger, something more important happening behind the scenes.
So it's like you're saying that these drone sightings and maybe even the hype around Elon Musk and Mars are just like smoke screens.
Yeah.
Keep us from seeing, like, the real truth.
That's one way to interpret it. The source doesn't offer like a definite answer
Yeah.
as to what's being hidden, but it encourages us to look beyond the surface, to question the motives of those in power, and to consider the possibility that we're being manipulated through fear and distraction.
It's kind of like a modern-day War of the Worlds, right? Back then, people panicked because they thought aliens were attacking. Now the source is saying that we're falling for a similar manipulation, but just, like, on a different scale.
That's a really interesting parallel.
Yeah.
And, the 1938 broadcast, it wasn't just some random story.
Right.
It was very carefully crafted.
Yeah.
And presented in a way that made it incredibly believable. And this source is arguing that we're constantly being bombarded with similar narratives that are carefully constructed to shape our perceptions and influence our behavior.
And it's not just about these drones, right?
That's right.
This source is connecting these numerical patterns to all sorts of events. School shootings, celebrity deaths, political scandals, even natural disasters.
It really paints a pretty bleak picture, suggesting that many of these events that shape our world are to some degree orchestrated and manipulated by powerful forces operating in the shadows.
Okay, now I'm getting, like, really freaked out. I mean, it's one thing to think about, like, shadowy figures pulling the strings, but to think that, like, everything, even tragedies, like school shootings, are part of some, like, grand plan, that's a pretty dark thought.
It is definitely a very uncomfortable perspective.
Yeah.
But even if you don't fully buy in to this source's interpretation, it does raise some important questions about the nature of reality, the power of information, and the possibility that we might not be as in control of our own lives as we think we are.
I hear you go, and I appreciate that you're not like presenting this as some absolute truth. You're encouraging us to think critically, to
Exactly.
question the source's claims, and to like come to our own conclusions.
That's the most important part. Critical thinking is essential, especially in a world where we are constantly bombarded with information from all directions.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what to believe anymore.
It is. It's about being discerning, questioning motives,
Oh.
and looking beyond the surface to try and understand these underlying currents that shape our world.
Okay, so let's say for a minute that this source is onto something. There really are these powerful forces working in the shadows, manipulating events, controlling information, using fear and distraction to keep us in check. The question is why? Like, what's their end game?
That is the ultimate question.
Right.
And unfortunately, this source doesn't provide like a clear-cut answer. It hints at the idea of control,
Okay.
both over resources and over the minds of the populace. It suggests that these shadowy figures are motivated by power, greed, and this desire to maintain their dominance over the world.
So, like classic Bond villain stuff, world domination,
Yeah.
pulling the strings from a secret lair,
Yeah.
the whole nine yards. But, like, how would they actually benefit from, like, creating chaos and fear? Wouldn't that make people more likely to, like, rebel or something?
That's a good point.
Okay.
But the source argues that fear can be a very powerful tool for control. When people are afraid, they are more likely to look to authority figures for guidance and protection. They're more willing to give up their freedoms in exchange for security.
I guess there's some truth to that. But it still seems pretty risky. You'd think that at some point people would start to see through it and, like, demand some answers.
Well, that's where this source gets really interesting. It argues that these shadowy figures are masters of manipulation. They understand how to use the media, how to shape public opinion, and how to exploit our fears and biases to their advantage.
I mean, that's a pretty bleak outlook, to be honest. It makes you feel kind of powerless.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but the source also offers a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
It argues that knowledge is power. The more we understand
Mm-hmm.
about how these systems of manipulation work, the better equipped we will be to resist them.
So you're saying that education is the key. If we arm ourselves with knowledge and critical thinking skills,
That's right.
we can break free from this web of control.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that message. But I still have so many questions like, who are these shadowy figures? What are their specific goals? And how can we as individuals actually make a difference?
Those are all excellent questions, and ones that this source unfortunately doesn't fully answer. It points the finger at various groups,
Okay.
the Jesuits, secret societies, government agencies, even figures like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it leaves us with more questions than answers,
It's like they're playing with us, right? They're keeping us in the dark, just to keep us guessing.
perhaps.
Hmm.
Or maybe the answers are actually simpler than we think. Maybe the real puppet masters
Mm-hmm.
are our own biases,
Mm.
our own tendencies to seek patterns and meaning,
Hmm.
where there are none.
Whoa, okay.
Hmm.
Are you saying that we might be creating these conspiracies ourselves?
Not consciously, of course.
Yeah.
But our brains are wired to seek patterns and make connections. Sometimes we see connections that aren't really there,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're dealing with complex and unsettling events.
I see what you mean. We want to believe that there's like order to the chaos, that there's a reason behind the madness. It's easier to think that someone is in control, even if they're a villain,
Yeah.
than to think that the world is just like random and unpredictable.
It's much more comforting to think that somebody's at the wheel, even if they're steering us in the wrong direction.
I mean, that makes sense. But still, there's something about these drone sightings that just doesn't sit right with me. It's like there's a piece of the puzzle missing.
And that's where the real work begins.
Okay.
If you're genuinely curious, don't stop here. Dig deeper, explore different perspectives, and see where the evidence leads you.
I like that. This deep dive has definitely sparked my curiosity. I'm ready to go down the rabbit hole and see what I can find.
Just remember,
Yeah.
keep an open mind. But don't check your critical thinking skills at the door.
That's great advice. All right, well, on that note, I think we've reached the final part of our deep dive into this fascinating and, let's be honest, a bit unsettling analysis. We'll be right back to wrap up the episode and try to make sense of it all, so stay with us. Okay, so we're back, and Wow. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From those strange drone sightings in New Jersey to the War of the Worlds broadcast, secret societies, government conspiracies, even Elon Musk's Mars ambitions. I mean, it's been a wild ride.
It has been.
I mean, honestly, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I mean, where do we even go from here? Like, how do we process all this information?
That's the challenge, isn't it? We're constantly bombarded with information these days,
Right.
and it's not always easy to separate fact from fiction,
Hmm.
truth from manipulation. This source, whether you agree with its conclusions or not, really encourages us to be more discerning,
Okay.
to think critically about the narratives
Mm-hmm.
that are presented to us, and to question the motives of those in power.
So, like, what's the takeaway? Should we all just be, like, walking around suspicious of everything and everyone?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Skepticism is healthy,
Yeah.
but paranoia can be paralyzing. The key is to find a balance
Okay.
between questioning everything
Yeah.
and remaining open to new information and different perspectives.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we become more discerning without falling down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories?
It starts with being aware of our own biases. We all have them,
Yeah.
and they can really influence how we interpret information. So it's about being willing to question our own assumptions and to consider alternative explanations, even if they challenge our beliefs.
So basically, don't take anything at face value.
It's a great way to put it. Do your own research, look for evidence,
Hmm.
and be willing to change your mind if the facts warrant it.
What about all this stuff with the numbers and the symbolism? Should we be paying more attention to that stuff in our everyday lives?
With numbers and symbols can be powerful tools for communication, but they can also be easily misinterpreted.
Right.
It's important to remember that they don't have inherent meaning. It's the interpretations that we assign to them that really matter.
So basically, use them as a starting point, but don't get too hung up on finding a hidden meaning in every number or symbol you come across.
Right. And be wary of anyone
Mhm.
who claims to have all the answers, especially when those answers involve, like, these
Mhm.
grand conspiracies
Hmm.
or secret societies controlling the world.
I think this whole deep dive has really taught me the importance of critical thinking and media literacy.
It's so important in this day and age.
It's not just about what we consume, it's about how we consume it. We really need to be aware of these techniques
Yeah,
of persuasion and manipulation that are being used to influence us.
absolutely.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
It has been.
I've learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to be looking at the world a little differently from now on.
That's what we hope for with every deep dive, is to spark your curiosity, challenge your assumptions, and empower you to think critically about the world around you.
Well said. And remember, deep divers, this is just the beginning. There's always more to learn, more to question, and more to explore. Stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions. Until next time.